And yet another very wonderful morning out there to all of you, my dearest friends. We left off in Ezekiel 16 talking about how Sodom and Samaria are likened to being more righteous than Judah, the terribleness, how far that they have fallen right before the Babylonian captivity. Now let's pick up in Ezekiel 17. And the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, Son of man, put forth a riddle, and speak a parable unto the house of Israel. And say, Thus saith the Lord God, a great eagle with great wings, long-winged, full of feathers, which had diverse colors, came unto Lebanon, and took the highest branch of the cedar. Lebanon back then, even to this day, is a place very much known for its very tall, mighty cedars. I remember I used to be a logger, and we would specifically cut cedars, and most of them aren't very big. They're some of the smaller that you can cut, but apparently in Lebanon they're pretty huge. But in this case, Lebanon is more just another name for Israel. But this great eagle, according to Calmet, this great eagle, according to all interpreters, represents Nebuchadnezzar, the great eagle. By his coming to Lebanon and taking the highest branch of the cedar is meant his invasion of Judea, his investing the city of Jerusalem and taking King Jehoiakim and the princes captive. Now, who was Jehoiakim? Jehoiakim was the king who only served for 3 months before being brought to Babylon. Verse 4, he cropped off the top of his young twigs and carried it into a land of traffic. He set it in a city of merchants. Speaking of taking Jehoiakim to Babylon. He took also of the seed of the land of Israel and planted it in a fruitful field. He placed it by great waters and set it as a willow tree. Speaking of Zedekiah. Zedekiah was the uncle of Jehoiakim as well as the very final king before the captivity, and he reigned for 11 years. But he was set up, told, okay, you're going to pay tribute to Nebuchadnezzar, and there's going to be peace. Your kingdom will flourish. Just obey the king of Babylon. Verse 6, and it grew and became a spreading vine of low stature, whose branches turned toward him, and the roots thereof were under him. So it became a vine, and brought forth branches, and shot forth sprigs. There was also another great eagle, with great wings and many feathers, representing Egypt. And behold, this vine did bend her roots toward him, and shot forth her branches toward him, that he might water it by the furrows of her plantation. Of course, this represents when Zedekiah, he broke the tribute, broke the alliance with Babylon, and turned instead to Egypt. It was planted in a good soil by great waters, that it might bring forth branches, and that it might bear fruit, that it might be a goodly vine. Say thou, Thus saith the Lord God, shall it prosper? Shall he not pull up the roots thereof, and cut off the fruit thereof, that it wither? It shall wither, and all the leaves of her spring, even without great power or many people to pluck it up by the roots thereof. Yea, behold, being planted, shall it prosper? Shall it not utterly wither? When the east wind toucheth it, the east meaning Nebuchadnezzar, it shall wither in the furrows where it grew. Moreover, the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, Say now to the rebellious house, Know ye not what these things mean? Tell them, Behold, the king of Babylon is come to Jerusalem, and hath taken the king thereof, and the princes thereof, and led them with him to Babylon. Now, just for clarification, this is the entire interpretation being laid out. And hath taken of the king's seed, and made a covenant with him, Zedekiah, and hath taken an oath of him. He hath also taken the mighty of the land. Notice that, how Nebuchadnezzar did take the mighty of the land when he took Jehoiakim. That way they couldn't rise up in power. That the kingdom might be base, that it might not lift itself up, but that by keeping of his covenant it might stand. But he rebelled against him, in sending his ambassadors into Egypt, that they might give him horses and much people. Shall he prosper? Shall he escape that doeth such things? Or shall he break the covenant and be delivered? As I live, saith the Lord God, surely in the place where the king dwelleth that made him king, in Babylon, whose oath he despised, and whose covenant he brake, even with him in the midst of Babylon he shall die. Neither shall Pharaoh with his mighty army and great company make for him in the war by casting up mounts and building forts to cut off many persons, seeing he despised the oath by breaking the covenant, when, lo, he had given his hand, and hath done all these things, he shall not escape. Therefore thus saith the Lord God, as I live, surely mine oath that he hath despised, and my covenant that he hath broken, even it will recompense upon his own head. And I will spread my net upon him, and he shall be taken in my snare, and I will bring him to Babylon, and will plead with him there for his trespass that he hath trespassed against me. Now this is all pretty straightforward, but the Lord is saying, my covenant hath I made. See, the Lord is the one that moved Nebuchadnezzar to make this covenant with him. But notice right down here, and I will bring him to Babylon, and will plead with him there, and that word plead in the Hebrew is shaphat, meaning to judge, that is, pronounce sentence. And all his fugitives with all his bands shall fall by the sword, and they that remain shall be scattered toward all winds, and he shall know that I the Lord have spoken it. Now pay very close attention to these final verses in chapter 17. Thus saith the Lord God, I will also take of the highest branch of the cedar. Now there's another branch being taken after all of this happens. The highest branch, and will set it. I will crop off from the top of his young twigs a tender one. Not these eagles doing it, it's the Lord himself doing it. And will plant it upon a high mountain and eminent. In the mountain of the height of Israel will I plant it, and it shall bring forth boughs and bear fruit, and be a goodly cedar. And under it shall dwell all fowl of every wing, and the shadow of the branches thereof shall they dwell. This figure is of the Messiah, as a scion of the royal tree of David. Though naturally growing out of the allegory here had been used by the prophets long before, as in Isaiah 11, and the name the branch had almost become a distinctive title for the Christ. Verse 24, and all the trees of the field shall know that I, the Lord, have brought down the high tree, have exalted the low tree, have dried up the green tree, pay attention to that, have dried up the green tree, and have made the dry tree to flourish. Something that only the green trees would be doing, flourishing. So it's a complete inversion of the world system that we're being told about right here. He's going to exalt the humble the exalted. I, the Lord, have spoken and have done it. Once again, we're told how all the trees of the field shall know. As the cedar represents the kingdom of Israel, so the other trees represent all other earthly powers who shall ultimately acknowledge the work of the Lord in the redemption of mankind through his Son. But for one last note, do recall what Jesus says about if they do this in a green tree, what will be done in the dry.